Drink upon waking up. You wake up, head straight to the kitchen and turn on the coffee maker. It seems like the most natural ritual in the world, right? But here's the problem. Your body already has its own natural coffee system. It's called cortisol. From 8 to 9 a.m., your cortisol is at its peak for the day. It's what really wakes you up. It gives you that initial energy to get going. When you drink coffee during this window, you're not adding energy. You're replacing cortisol with caffeine. And the result is that your body stops producing cortisol at that time because someone else has already done the work. Then over time, you'll need more and more coffee to feel the same effect. It's not weakness, it's chemistry. The solution is simple. Wait 90 minutes after you wake up to have your first cup of coffee. It seems hard, but after a week, you'll notice that the coffee starts working properly again. Drinking too late. Okay, so you waited the 90 minutes, great. But then 3 p.m. rolled around, you were tired and you had another one, and then another at 5 p.m. and now it's 11 p.m. and you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about absolutely nothing but unable to sleep. There's a name for this, caffeine half-life. Caffeine takes an average of 5 to 6 hours to be half eliminated from your bloodstream. So that 3 p.m. coffee, by 9 p.m. you still have half the caffeine circulating in your body. The one from 5 p.m, it's still active at midnight, and poor sleep leads to fatigue the next day, which leads to more coffee, which leads to more poor sleep. It's a cycle. The general rule that works for most people, no coffee after 2 p.m. It might seem too early, but try it for a week and notice the difference in your sleep. Drinking on an empty stomach. This is what most people do without realizing the damage it causes. You had coffee this morning without eating anything first. You're not hungry, so it's fine like this. But coffee is acidic, and when it hits a completely empty stomach, it stimulates gastric acid production without anything to digest. The practical result, that feeling of nausea, heartburn, or an upset stomach that you think is normal, often isn't. Plus, caffeine on an empty stomach enters the bloodstream much faster, which causes that energy spike followed by a brutal crash 40 minutes later. Have you ever felt that? You drank coffee, got wired too quickly, and soon after felt like the ground had disappeared from under your feet? That's exactly it. The solution doesn't have to be a full breakfast. Even a handful of nuts, a banana, or a piece of bread creates a protective layer before your coffee. Small adjustment, big difference. If you like this kind of practical content, subscribe to the channel. There's much more to come. Wrong coffee to water ratio. This is where most people think that more coffee equals more flavor or more water equals milder, and sometimes it works by accident, but most of the time it doesn't. There's a standard ratio known as the golden ratio in the coffee world, 1 gram of coffee for every 15 to 17 milliliters of water. In practical terms, for a standard 8-ounce cup, about 240 milliliters, you need about 14 to 16 grams of ground coffee. When you use too little coffee, the water runs through the grounds too quickly and extracts only the shallow, bitter notes. When you use too much coffee, the result is an intense but unbalanced coffee, where bitterness dominates and the flavour becomes muddled. And the irony is that the coffee you think is strong, because you use too much grounds, often has less caffeine than a well-proportioned coffee. Because efficient extraction isn't about raw quantity, it's about balance. The difference in flavour is absurd. Wrong water temperature. This is the most subtle mistake of all. Boiling water. Sounds right, doesn't it? Hotter equals more extraction. Wrong. Water at 100 degrees Celsius burns the coffee's aromatic compounds, those notes of caramel, chocolate and fruit that make a good coffee great, destroyed by excessive heat. What's left? Bitterness. The ideal temperature for brewing coffee is between 195 degrees Fahrenheit and 205 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just below the boiling point. The practical and simple version: boil the water as usual and wait 30 to 45 seconds before pouring it over the coffee. That's it. No thermometer, no special equipment. That half-minute pause makes the difference between a bitter coffee and a coffee that actually tastes good. Wrong storage. You bought some good coffee, you spent $15 or $20 on a high-quality bag, and you stored it on the shelf above the stove, or in the fridge to make it last longer, or in a clear glass jar on the counter. All wrong. The three enemies of coffee are light, heat, and moisture. The stove gives off direct heat. The fridge has moisture and absorbs odours from other foods. The clear jar lets light in. Oxidized coffee loses its essential oils, which are exactly what give it its aroma and flavour. What do you end up drinking? Tired coffee with no personality, bitter and lacking depth, the correct way. An opaque, airtight container at room temperature, away from light and heat. And buy in smaller quantities. A 250 gram package that you use up in 2 weeks will always be better than a 1 kilogram package that sits there for 2 months. Fresh coffee will always beat well stored but old coffee. Pre-ground coffee. This is what separates those who can actually taste the difference from those who think good coffee is just about the brand name. The moment you grind the coffee is the moment it starts to die. Seriously. Whole beans keep their oils and aromatic compounds preserved for weeks. As soon as you grind them, the surface area exposed to air increases exponentially and oxidation begins immediately. Within 15 to 30 minutes of grinding, a significant portion of the aroma is already gone. That package of freshly ground coffee that sat on the supermarket shelf for 3 weeks before it reached your home, freshly ground for them, not for your cup. The realistic solution, an entry-level grinder like the Baratza Encore or similar models, costs around $50 to $60. Does that seem like a lot? Divide it by the number of cups you drink per month. It often comes out to less than 5 cents extra per cup, and the result is a completely different coffee. By the way, what's your favorite brewing method? Espresso, pour over, French press? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. Too much sugar. This last point is a delicate one because a lot of people simply like their coffee sweet, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's worth understanding what's going on. When you add too much sugar, what you're doing is masking the coffee's true flavour, which often means you don't even know if the coffee you're drinking is good or bad because the sugar covers everything up. It's like putting too much ketchup on everything and never really knowing if the meat was good. Plus, coffee with too much sugar completely changes how caffeine affects your body. The energy spike rises fast and drops even faster because the sugar kicks in too. The crash gets worse. Not needing sugar in your coffee isn't snobbery. It's a sign that the coffee itself is good enough. Want to try it? Try cutting it in half for a week, then cut it in half again. You won't be able to go back to your previous level because your taste buds quickly get used to less sweetness, and then you start to taste the real coffee. And when that happens, you start to realize you were wasting money on mediocre coffees that only work because the sugar masked the flaws.